Peace. On this video, I'm going to build on absolutes. Absolutes meaning when somebody's own way of life, perceptions, understandings, or the way that they handle anything is just done definitively, and they impose those absolutes on whomever like a general blanket statement. Now, absolutes are perceived to be only one way. So when you see somebody building, they speaking as if there is no other way. And as men, we like to use percentages. You hear that a lot. If you're doing the knowledge and you're paying attention to when you hear men build, we typically speak about percentages because percentages are dealt with logical understandings, logical ways to break it down to where we perceive it's easier to take in, and it validates to a certain degree the percentage of whatever it is. Like they say in America, 70%, 68% people are obese. So you see that percentage, right? So when people hear 68 to 70% obese, you automatically plant that seed that, hey, if it's 100%, out of 100%, 70% is obese. Damn, right? So that's just an example of how percentages are used specifically by men when they building, right? They typically speak about percentages. And what they do is they lace it with an absolute build to where if you don't have no knowledge of self nor a strong understanding on how to break things down and take back what's useful for yourself, that you can easily be swayed to believe that it's an absolute. So right, the media use it all the time as absolutes, right? When they building, the propaganda is that it's absolutes, and it puts you into this frenzy or draws you into some anxiety to where you feel a certain way as if you don't do this. As if we don't know that things are said to get a certain reaction from you, the knee-jerk reaction, right? We know this to be an absolute fact, yet and still, we typically take on face value what we consider a credible source or somebody or some entity that we give validity to, that they build in, and we take it as truth, as an absolute, and we act accordingly to what they're saying. I would say a lot of times when people are building on absolutes, it's their perception. And also their perception can be their reality, right? So their reality could be perfect. They're making the right amount of money. Their relationships is right. They moving in the right direction of what they consider. So when they building in an absolute term of their own reality, which is truth, right? Is their reality. Yet and still, it's not an absolute, meaning that is the only way to execute. An absolute would be like below zero is freezing. That's an absolute undeniable fact. You stick your hand in some below zero freaking water, you're going to be cold as hell, right? That's an absolute. If you stick your hand in a fire pit, your ass is going to be burned. That's an absolute. There is no gray area. There's no two ways about it. But when you're speaking in terms about how to get money, let's use that as an example. If you're speaking about how to get money and somebody did the traditional way and went to college and built their way up and became a multimillionaire by ways of going to college, they're going to build in the absolute term more than not to say that college is the way to go, etc., right? But that isn't an absolute. And we know it's not, for the simple fact is we have entrepreneurs and people that's freaking illiterate that has become entrepreneurs, right? So that's the example to be like, an absolute isn't necessarily an absolute when somebody is building on their reality. Now, listen to what I'm saying. Their reality is truth to them, right? We take back the best parts for ourselves, and definitely don't get stagnant off of somebody's reality as if there isn't no other way to do it, right? Of course, there is better ways of doing things, right? You can be homeless, went to jail, and all hell and broke loose, and 10 years later, you become a multimillionaire. Fantastic. While as somebody else has took the quote-unquote proper steps and became a multimillionaire without all the struggles and hardships, right? So this isn't a bill to be like the hell with trying to do it the right, proper way, right? No, this is not that. This is really just saying absolutes isn't absolute to everybody. And remember, the absolute is when people be building on their way of life or the avenues that they took as if there is absolutely no other way. We are easily swayed on what somebody is talking about, and then we start second guessing our own situations. And it can be very well positive criticism that's telling you to change your ways, which is fantastic, which is great. It doesn't mean that you still can't achieve goals, success, victory, wins, despite whatever your past story is, right? So don't get caught up in absolutes or hearing somebody speak about their way of life and their reality, right? Their reality will have some pieces of jewels that you definitely can take back and use to help yourself propel forward. And you can take a lot of lessons from what somebody else has done. That doesn't negate the fact that you might be coming from jack shit and then made all kind of mistakes, but you still can bounce back. You have to stay on the straight and narrow and to build, to accumulative the small wins to win the war. You have to win battles to win the war, right? So, yeah, man, it's all perception. It's all perception. And never get caught up in somebody else's perception, especially about you. Because if you don't have a strong mind, you have no mental fortitude, people can easily draw you in to be in some bullshit and to have you second guessing yourself, double stepping and not executing, because then you're trying to be like somebody else. Your 9,000 miles is your 9,000 miles that you have to swim on your own, and you course correct as you go, right? And somebody can think you a piece of shit. But once you really start being concerned about what somebody think of you, that is the beginning of the end. Now, it's a very thin line on what I'm saying, right? You can't be wilding out and being a piece of shit and turn around and saying that I don't care what nobody say about me. You'll never grow up to see the wizard. You will never get to where you're trying to get to. See, even now, I'm speaking in absolutes. Right? But I'm speaking in absolutes with a caveat. I'm not saying there isn't other ways to get to where you're trying to go. Right? And then, being financially successful, you have to include financially, physically, spiritually. All that shit goes hand in hand. And how do we know that is an absolute? Because historically, we know it. People become rich, wealthy, and it's all fucked up in the head. So we know that money isn't everything. And also, if you come from the mud, not having money is the fucking lick neither. You got to have bread. But once you let bread dictate who you are, then you become a fucking weirdo. So you have to find the balance in between financially, mental, and spiritual. You need to get all those power grids up. Right? You focus on one, you lack on the other. You got multimillionaires, billionaires saying that they wish they would have spent more time with their family. and then you broke his shit saying that I need to put 1,000 hours into getting bread. So what that 1,000 hours do? That take away from being from your family. So you, being the Magellan of your own ship, must ascertain what is the balance or what would be the sacrifices to get to where you're trying to get to. Right? So there is no absolutes outside of what the fuck is hot and what's cold as shit. So you got to take what people say with a grain of salt. It's a lot of value in what people say. However, what they saying doesn't dictate who you are or where you going. Just because somebody is doing better or they made better choices doesn't negate the fact that you can't course correct. If your ass is lost on a road trip, are you going to be fucking lost forever? It's a shitload of caveats, right? Even with that being said, historically, statistically, percentage-wise, if you a bum-ass motherfucker, you typically will be a bum-ass motherfucker. It just is what it is. If you a motherfucker that's from the streets and you hang in the streets and you want to have a party with your pussy, typically you're going to have parties with your pussy. That's just how this shit go. Now to say 100% everybody that came from those walk of lives didn't course correct as if it's an absolute, that would be a fucking fallacy. It wouldn't be a truth because that's absolutely not an absolute. I would say, right, I'm gonna do percentages, right? A small percentage of them course correct and got their shit together. The majority end up fucked up. That's just a fact. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt. And everything comes back to discipline, focus, being committed about who you hang around, the fucking positive shit you tell yourself, all that cornball shit, that is really real shit. All that shit matters. So, man, I'm just giving a quick build, man, on absolutes because the shit is all a mental game. It's a mental game about how you stay focused. It's a mental game on how you deviate. It's a mental game when you listen to people with absolutes. It's a mental game about staying on your purpose. All this shit is real, man. So I definitely dropped some jewels right here. Values being provided. And if you took anything back from this, like, comment, subscribe, and do all that shit to make this video have people look at it. Whatever that fucking algorithm of YouTube is and all that other shit. Hopefully, if you paying any attention, I'm fucking not that. But I'm building, I'm providing value. So let's run that shit up, man. Peace.